Thank you, PJ. It is time for another edition of the Pair and a Spare podcast. Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com, Chip Scoggins still from Football Across Minnesota, and Justin Gaard from The Fan. We are here on your YouTube. We are here on your podcast. We are here wherever you get your favorite podcast. We are here thanks to Jack's Cafe, jaxcafe.com. Shout out to the lovely couple that celebrated their first anniversary at Jack's Cafe over the weekend, thanks to our recommendation. I trust you had an amazing time. The pictures looked incredible, and it's good to see you guys. We're doing this a day early because Mr. Projects, Burnsy, is busy. Everybody gets paid with an extra day to listen this week because Mr. Projects, he got that planner, and then all of a sudden realized that our normal Tuesday time wouldn't work anymore. It's amazing to be as busy as Chip is.
It's quite remarkable, Chipper. Am I ever going to see you in the press box or even at a press conference ever again, Mr. Columnist, or are you just too busy gallivanting around Football Across Minnesota?
I was thinking on the thing where you have my Football Across Minnesota, we should put all of Gaardsy's jobs on there and just watch it be like 5 lines of screen.
I can add a scroll right below you. Right now I have follow the guys all season at the Pair and a Spare pod. We'll get Jack's Cafe up there. Yeah, I could tell you. I could actually put my daily calendar on there.
You wouldn't see your face. You wouldn't see your face. It'd just be all your stuff.
From 9 to 9:30 I did this. From 9:30 to 10:30 I did this. I'm just glad we found a time because
I appreciate you. I got to be out of town tomorrow, so
Mr. Projects.
Chasing the story, but hey, it's the pig week. I'm happy, man. I'll be there Saturday night. What's the over under on invalid fair catch signal being written, spoken about?
Geez. I mean,
this
infinity
week in both markets.
Infinity. It's
how much in Iowa? How much in Iowa?
A lot. A lot, because the head coach of the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, J.D. Vance, keeps going with the the fake news, fake story that they somehow got screwed last year. But yeah, I'm going in early. I don't care. It's Monday.
It's going to be a long week.
It's going to be a long week. Well, they keep propagating this myth that they somehow got screwed. It's reminding me of the Haitian immigrants eating cats. That's all I'm going to say. That's what it's reminding me of. Okay, that's all it's reminding me of. I don't even care anymore. I've told you I've dreaded this week literally since we knew they were going to play every single year. We knew this summer that it was going to be a night game. That was speculated about. That had me just I can't even imagine. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, but it's going to be a beautiful day. It's probably going to be hot. The tailgating does not slow down when it's a nice day and it's a night game. It's not like people are going to be smart enough to pace themselves on either side. No. That you got this thing just looming over your shoulder, kind of like my Minnesota and Iowa picture here. That my dad got in like the 80s, which is one of my prized possessions. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. Can we talk about Nevada first, or do you want anything else you want me to say to get myself in trouble less than 3 minutes into the podcast?
You came in hot. That was good.
I can already tell you, if we have tickets to give away this week, I know what phrase I want people to tweet at us that I know that they'll have listened to the podcast. I can assure you I know what that's going to be.
No, you got to be at the end of the podcast.
You guys know, man, I love Kirk Ferentz. I love that guy. I thought it was he's such a good coach. He's done such a good, even how he handled the Cade McNamara suspension this year, I thought was perfect, and just said, look, I blew it in 24 years. I've never done this. That's the opposite of what Jim Harbaugh has done. I'm a Kirk Ferentz guy. I am a big believer, but that's one thing that he keeps going with over and over. Even last year, last January, we were talking about it. It hasn't helped dispel the notion that Iowa got screwed last year.
Has he latched on in your memory? And it might be too hard to remember, but has there been another thing like this that he's latched onto and continues to harp on in the past? I mean, maybe his son in the offense, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'd have to think about it.
But one play that just keeps – and I was, we could talk about Nevada, but I actually, because it was a night game, I didn't get to go down to the press conference after the game last year, and I sat in the press box, and they played his press conference over the loudspeakers, and I was just like, holy cow, he was not going to just let that issue slide. So it'll be – we'll get to it.
Yeah, so the over-under on this podcast, I think we've already gone over it, Chip, to answer your question.
I know,
and I'm not helping. I'm trying to avoid it. I've tried. I think I've done a good job on Twitter the last 6 months, just leaving it alone, because we all know the two sides of the argument at this point. I mean, it is very much political. It feels like one of our political arguments. One side thinks this, one side thinks this, and no one's in the middle. And there's no middle ground. It's just how it is.
I will say the good our friends at Dinkytown Athletes came up with a creative T-shirt. I love that T-shirt. That's pretty cool.
Yep, they've got the rule
with
on
the
back.
actual rule.
I know. It's very creative. I didn't like it because I just wanted it to go away. But I'm a fraud because I just brought it up. I know, that's right. I just absolutely extinguished or just flamed the whole thing. But there's plenty of time to talk about that. Let's talk about the game against Nevada. Mr. Projects was Mr. Parents weekend again this past weekend. Was hanging out. Beer games, phone chargers, everything good down at Parents weekend?
Yeah, not beer games because it was a down and back, so I had to drive, but it was good to see the son after a month of college, and he's pretty much dropped me and my wife like a bad habit. I mean, we're out of sight.
He appreciates everything you did, but you're no longer needed.
We're down to, hey, can you take me to Target and make a Target run to fill up the door? And that was about it. Nah, he appreciates being there. So, but I did tape the game, but Burnsy, I wasn't there in person. You give me the lowdown. I did watch it. I didn't watch the fourth quarter. I'm not going to lie. I watched the first three, and it was kind of putting me to sleep.
Yeah, the fourth quarter, you didn't really need to do a lot, except the only thing that kept me awake was that the starters, Max Brosmer and Darius Taylor, were in for a lot longer than I thought they probably should be, especially after Brosmer, Burnsy took that low hit on one of the third downs. I think it was one of the third downs. And then Darius obviously had the huge game. A week after lauding PJ for taking all the players out and getting some different guys in there, I was like, what year is this? I don't think we need Max Brosmer out here right now. It's a team that had like 6 personal foul penalties a week ago. I wouldn't trust them to keep your quarterback upright. But what were your general thoughts of the game, Burnsy?
It's weird to talk about going into conference play that a PJ Fleck offense is a throw it to run it offense, but that's the reality. Because, I mean, I looked at the stats today. If you look at the 3 starting tailbacks, so you got Marcus Major, Darius Taylor, Jordan Newman, they're running the ball for about 4.8 yards per carry, which if you just knew that, you'd think, boy, it's another year where Minnesota can run the football. But if you take out that 80-yard run, which, again, it's tough to do, but if you want to give a better look at what reality is, they're at like 3.6 per carry. And you've got Max Brosmer, who's already dropped back, Chip, 94 times.
Yeah.
And we're talking about games the last 2 weeks in which Minnesota has combined to win 75-0. So that to me says everything, where, again, you can't run the ball in the first half, where you run the ball for 27 yards on 9 running back carries. And it's Max Brosmer in this passing offense that continued to be the driving force that gets the ball moving.
Yeah, the thing that impressed me, I think, is obviously the sheer number of times they're passing is different. But and Gaardsy mentioned it last week, but I forgot if it was a turnover or whatever, or they were up big. First play, the next possession, they throw the bomb down I think Daniel Jackson, he overshot him by a while there. But I mean, they're throwing on first down a lot. And throwing in situations where it feels like they're going for, to really put their foot on the gas. And so I think that's the biggest thing is just, yes, it's how often they're doing it, but in what situations they're throwing it. And you're right. I mean, PJ said it throughout fall camp, throw to pass or throw to run. And I kept thinking, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, that's what they're doing right now. Now let's see when they face better defenses, how that balances out. If it does, if they still have to rely on their passing game. They've got to be able to be more consistent along the line, though. I think that's my biggest concern for them right now. It's too many penalties and too much inconsistency that they just haven't. That unit just has not clicked yet. And now you're going against the Iowa team. To me, like if you look at this Iowa matchup, like this is going to be one in the trenches. It always is in the Big Ten. But I just think when you're facing Iowa, you got to be able to win in the trenches or at least hold your own.
And Burnsy, they've been able to do that the last handful of years. There were before last year where they finally knocked them off. You think about the Mo Ibrahim fumble game. You even think about the game in Iowa City the year before when they had Bucky and Kai basically running all over the field. They've pretty much matched Iowa physically the last couple of years, have they not? And so we'll see if that continues, obviously, but it is a big question mark going into Saturday.
It's the biggest question mark of the entire team is why can't the offensive line figure it out? Now, it's not just the offensive line. It's the tight ends are a part of that. They're seeing a lot of +1, +2 in the boxes. I mean, if you listen to Nevada's coach after the game, he was talking about how stopping the run was his number one priority and how they wanted to move the front, not give them the same picture twice, make it really difficult to block them. But if we didn't have the data point, and it's the same thing we talked about last week, if we didn't have the data points that these Brian Callahan offensive lines figured out, I think we would have been leading with it on the podcast. Now, every year is its own entity, and you'd like to think that between Ariante Ursery and Quinn Carroll and Tyler Cooper, they've played a lot of football. But it's trying to figure out how you can get moving as one, because it's not the same guy every time where you have these negative runs in the backfield. It's different guys in different scenarios. And again, Iowa's going to play you maybe a little bit more straight up defensively because they've got some creatures on the defensive line that are big, strong, and long. And so maybe that's going to be the thing that kickstarts this offensive line. But they've got to start to figure it out because, I mean, I even go back to what was the game? Was it 2018 in which the right tackle gets benched after the first half, in which then starts the Daniel Fa'alele era? I forget who the I think it was Anthony Nelson.
Anthony Nelson. I could see it at Kinnick State. I think it was at Kinnick. No, it wasn't.
No, it was here at Huntington.
It was here.
Bay. Yeah,
I can still see the play you're talking about where I just happened to be isolated on Nelson there, and it was rough. It was a mismatch.
3 first half sacks.
Yeah.
He just completely destroyed that game. Right tackle gets benched. Daniel Fa'alele comes in. You can't have a performance like that this weekend, certainly. But I'd also say, I mean, as much as it is about the running game, we've also seen them put their money where their mouth is with the way that they're targeting tailbacks. Darius Taylor, 5 receptions. Marcus Major continues to be a focal point as well. And that's where you've seen it even with the Vikings and just in the NFL in general. If you can have the check down, and they're also scheming stuff to Taylor as well, it's an extension of the run game where if people are going to load up in the box, you can just toss it out to your tailbacks. It doesn't have to be this 1920s offense like we've seen in previous years under PJ. So I'm going to be very curious to see, because now you get an Iowa team coming in this weekend that, they've had some explosive play issues, but they still have one of the best back sevens in all of college football. They've been exposed a little bit with guys that are maybe new, but they've still got a lot of talented players.
Well, we know they're going to continue to get better as the season goes on because that's what Iowa does. We've been saying it for 25 years. It is one of those St. Louis is a baseball town cliches that everybody says right? But it's true. Yeah. It's just true. And so I think it's actually an advantage to take on Iowa this early in the season. Even though I was talking to somebody after the game and they said, "Do you think we're getting Iowa at a good time?" And I said, honestly, it doesn't matter when you get Iowa. I've seen it for 14 years. I've seen it for longer than that, but just even in my time, like I've seen it when, 2019 is a great example where that was kind of the first time they were ready to run Brian Ferentz out of town. Gophers are coming off Penn State. They're undefeated. They're in the top 10. Sports Illustrated's here, the whole bit. And Brian Ferentz marches them down the field 3 straight drives to basically change the game. And I've seen it just other times throughout. There's only been one time where I've been truly surprised about Iowa's performance, and that was the Max Williams game where they just completely no-showed. That was the season.
It was also the last time Minnesota won against Iowa at home was when they obliterated Iowa with Max Williams.
And that was, by the way, they did that week against Iowa. They took a lot of shots and they threw the ball.
They took shots. Yeah.
There's a theme that I think you've heard on this podcast, but it almost doesn't matter because Iowa is, Minnesota always talks about 1 week at a time, 1-0 in the championship season. Like Iowa's good at that too. So I know we're going to talk about Iowa's struggles a little bit, and they struggled with Troy here, but to me that is irrelevant. Like they know what they're coming into.
Well, and they're going to have a great plan defensively. I mean, they got maybe the best defense coordinator in the country. It's just he always has a good plan, right? And their guys are going to play hard. They're going to be physical. So I don't think it's going to be anything different than what we've seen. It's to me, can the passing game continue to click in the way that we've seen to make it so it's not so much pressure on the run game to try to, have Darius Taylor have this superhuman game where you really have no other plan B. I'm curious to see if they come out and it's still throwing the ball to run the ball. If they're going to stick with that,
I think they will.
My hunch is yes. I think they will because I think they found something here. Now you're going to be facing better athletes and better scheme and all that, but I just think there's a trust with this quarterback that we have not seen, and since Tanner was humming in 2019, even in subsequent years, and I trust with quarterback and wide receivers. Because I think
the quarterback's not going to put the ball in harm's way, which
that's the right word.
PJ is the number one thing.
Yeah, but I think even I think PJ, as much as quarterback, I think he lost some trust in his wide receivers too in the drops that we've seen the last couple of years. So I think just the whole operation in terms of the passing game, and so I think he. I think we'll see more of the same now. Whether they are able to complete almost, or were they at almost 70% like that mark? Were they 68? I see you right there, Burnsy.
I think his adjusted number is 80%, but yeah, they're somewhere around 65 to 70% with Brosmer right now.
Yeah, trust is the word. That's where I was going to go next, and I think I said that on Gopher Football Sunday on the Fan on Sunday mornings before Burnsy joined. That play that the play to Daniel Jackson that you talk about, Chip, throwing out of their own end zone in the North Carolina game, like all those bits. It's kind of like Darnold and the Vikings right now. Like you can tell Kevin O'Connell trusts Sam Darnold at the moment, and it's not always going to be perfect. You're going to throw a ball that Christian Driver is not paying attention to, and you're going to get a pick. Darnold's going to throw an interception in the red zone. Like, it doesn't mean it's all going to be perfect here, but you can tell just by what they're letting him do and what they're continuing to let him do that he has full trust. And I was talking to somebody about this today. I mean, remember, Max Brosmer's here after getting like 9 degrees at his old college. He's taking 2 classes that I think I might be able to pass. He's here to play football, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not criticizing him. Like, the reality of him in 2024 is he's here to be he's majoring in starting quarterback. And that's what he's doing. That's why he's in the meetings that he's been in forever. That's why he and Harbaugh are on the same page. That's why according to PJ, they're letting him do way more things even at the line than any quarterback he's ever had in terms of protections and checks and all this type of stuff because they trust the guy. And we'll see what happens Saturday. We'll see what happens against Michigan. We'll see what happens against USC. This is obviously a big gauntlet, but you brought the guy in to be this guy, and they're allowing him to be that guy so far this season.
And isn't it interesting? I think I've heard PJ say or read him quoted this way, like, and he keeps harping on, it's like, we had to get this right. We had to get this one right. It's almost like him saying, we felt a lot of pressure to not screw up this quarterback situation again. And so I think that shows you, like, what they feel about the guy. Like, the trust and just that they feel like they did their homework and their diligence to get the right guy in here because it's, it's just interesting. I saw it again this weekend. We had to get this one right.
And I feel like they have. Burnsy, you're looking at me like you hear a noise that you want to know what the origin
Chip,
is.
Are you fidgeting over there or what's going on?
Oh, it's my fan.
Your microphone's good. It's picking up.
Let's hear all the readers or the listeners talk about my microphone now.
How do you get it all figured out one day with you, Chipper, for an hour between you clicking the pen.
Did you hear that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We can hear it. Yeah, we hear everything.
I have anybody knows me knows I have we call it like a nervous
something.
tick or what.
It's making Burnsy nervous.
Well, I'm tired of seeing the tweets and emails, so I'm trying to be proactive here and speaking for the listeners. But as much time as we've even spent on the offense.
Yep, here you go. We're 18 minutes in, and we haven't even talked about the most impressive part of this non-conference.
They haven't allowed a single point in the month of September. It has been 121 minutes and 44 seconds since they last allowed a point. I mean, it's the defense, and as much as we've seen, and again, with the crossover in this town between the Vikings and the Gophers, with what Brian Flores is doing for the Vikings defense with different looks and different things like that, I think you've started to really see that with the way Corey Heatherman has come in and really implemented some interesting changes where you've got guys lining up all over. We're seeing some different looks that I think are really perplexing quarterbacks. And if Brennan Lewis never has to see the Gophers ever again, he lost 30-0 when he was at Colorado in 2021 and when he was starting quarterback. And then last week, comes in, hadn't had any turnovers, 6 touchdowns, was averaging almost 70 yards on the ground a game, comes in and more turnovers, runs for negative yards. I'd say as much as we spend time talking about the offense, Chipper, what Heatherman's got this defense doing, and I understand that Rhode Island and Nevada are not exactly the St. Louis Rams back in the day.
Yeah.
But they've got this thing going, and they also, I believe, are number 2 in the country in interceptions so far. So what's been your impression so far of what you saw from Corey Heatherman on Saturday?
Well, 2 things that jumped out to me was their line was just absolutely dominant. They were physical. I mean, they were all over them in the backfield every play, it felt like. And then also just the number of guys he's trusting to bring on blitzes. Then we see, was it Darius Green got a sack coming on a corner blitz? Did Henderson get a sack?
He was a sack and a half.
Henderson's all over the place.
Yeah, Henderson's playing great right now. But I think the fact that he's using his personnel creatively, but I think everything stems from the line. I mean, those guys up front. I think Anthony Smith is having a terrific start to his season. He just seems like he's making all kinds of impacts in different ways. But if they can continue to play like that, and we thought that we said it, ad nauseum that we thought the offensive line, defensive line were the strength of this team, and I think the defensive line's showing up and showing that.
Yeah, Jad Joyner had the best 4 tackle, no sack, no tackle for loss performance you'll ever see. It's part of why Kerry Brown just won Big Ten Freshman of the Week, where the first interception beats the right guard inside, hits the quarterback, the wounded duck across the center of the field gets picked off. He forced 2 holding calls that backed up Nevada significantly. Your boy Anthony Smith forced another holding call. And that's where, to me, that's the most exciting part is Fleck came into the season saying this is the chance to be the most talented defensive line. I think so far we've seen that. I'd also say they've become more physical each week, and now that has to culminate when Iowa comes to town, who I think is among the better offensive lines we've seen in the Kirk Ferentz era, especially so far with the way that they've been able to run the football. But that's also part of it. Is how do you go from being one of the worst third down defenses in America to now you haven't allowed a point in the month of September? They have been outstanding at being physical at the point of attack, allowing these linebackers and safeties to come up. And when you're in 3rd and long, I mean, we're seeing some of these Heatherman packages where there's 3 guys on the left side on the center, then they're blitzing a guy off the other side. They're doing a lot of creative things and keeping the opposing offensive line guessing. And as you know, Chipper, if you can get pressure on a college quarterback, these guys aren't like the ones in the NFL that have the wherewithal to scramble and throw it away. They're going to put the ball in harm's way, which is how Minnesota gets as many interceptions as they've had the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you're seeing some panicky throws, I think, the last 2 weeks from these. Now, granted, they're going to face better quarterbacks, in the Big Ten, I think.
Well, you got Cade McNamara or Brendan Sullivan this weekend.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Quarterback change, Alex Orji today. And then, Miller Moss is going to be really good when he comes in a few weeks. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I think they've made the quarterbacks look panicky the last 2 weeks with their pressure. And that's, PJ talked about it in training camp is how he thought this was the most versatile defensive line that they've had in terms of being able to move guys around and the skill sets that they have. And so I give Heatherman credit for kind of tapping into that and seeing what works and playing a lot of guys here the first 3 weeks to figure out his rotations and who can be trusted. And, I think it's still the back end particularly. You see they're playing a lot of guys back there, right? And that's only going to benefit you as you get in October and November because there's going to be injuries pile up and now you have a lot of guys that have played, so you feel a little bit more confident putting them in there.
Yeah, you've got Justin Wally, obviously, who left the game this past week. Burnsy, I'm not going to ask. I wasn't at the PJ Fleck press conference. Did Justin Wally's name come up? Or should I just look for the availability report 2 hours before kickoff on Saturday, 4:30?
That's exactly what PJ said. Is how I do this? You'll find out 2 hours ahead of time. But
that's fine.
Then hit you with the smirk and said, "I appreciate the question."
Yeah,
I tell you, anytime on the Justin Wally injury, he's just in a back pedal and then he just goes down. And anytime you have a non-contact and knee type of injury. Now, to your point, Gaardsy, that you made, I think I Go for Football Sunday, I saw it the same way you did, where he came back out of the injury tent and they tried to have him give it a go.
Yes.
Which they do a bunch of different tests on the sidelines with the knee, stability-wise. So that tells me it wasn't, in theory, incredibly significant. And I've heard the same that it's not going to be a significant injury. But I think his availability for Saturday's game is certainly going to be in question.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of times if it is season ending, now I know Quentin Reddings was season ending. We found that out in the availability report. But historically, whether it's Chris Ottman-Bell or other players, he has come out on Monday and said he suffered an injury. He's done for the season. Just knowing how they operate, they're not going to try to put a guy back into the game if they have any doubt that he can. And they know pretty quickly. I always remember the Nebraska game, like 2012, I want to say 2011 or 2012. When it felt like there were like 4 ACL injuries in the fourth quarter, they just got pounded. It was Tom Osborne's last day as the AD, the whole bit. It was crazy. And I've never seen so many doctors just go over, mess with the knee, give that signal, and it was like, they're done. It's over. Yeah. That's not what happened here. Like, that always informs me for moving forward, what they're doing, what they're trying. If they were trying to get him back in the game, it's not a season ender. I'd be very surprised if that's what we found out on the availability report. But you want to have everybody in, right? You want to have everybody full strength. It's tough to lose guys, especially in the non-conference when you should be, you just want to come out of that injury free. It's like preseason essentially. But in the secondary, that was one of your biggest questions all summer, right, Burnsy, is who are the playmakers? Seems like they're finding guys, whether it is Kerry Brown, who had a great day. Ethan Robinson, I think, is a sneaky good find. He just has the look of a big-time cornerback. We obviously know about Wally. And then, Coy Perit in the back end, we've talked a lot about him. I know Chip will want to talk a lot about him as well in the punt game, but it seems like they have done a good job of kind of finding guys, at least to give themselves a chance here in these first Big Ten games.
They talked all offseason about we want to mix and match to play guys in certain places where it's going to further put them in areas of strength and take away their weaknesses, which is why you see them rotate as much as they do, different packages as much as they do. And I think they've done a really good job of that so far. And I think it all comes back to, for me, the amount of pressure that they've been able to get. And when you are just able to put the ball in harm's way, you hope that you have guys that can take advantage of that. And they have been. So whether it's been Kerry Brown, who I just said, Big Ten freshman of the week after the 2 interceptions that he had on Saturday, Coleman Bryson, the other free safety, I think has been very consistent so far, especially in the run game. You got Darius Greenback this past week, who will rotate with Aiden Gooseby. You'll have Coy Perit in certain scenarios. Jonte McMillan is back. So they're going to need all these guys. But it starts up front. If you can continue to get pressure, it's going to make everything on the back end so much easier.
And I will say, both offensively and defensively, real quickly, the crowd appreciates what they're seeing. I don't know if you guys can always hear it in the press box. They let PJ know when they're mad about running for it on 3rd and 9, and it's especially the spot on their sideline. There's never any seats open. Like that place is always sold out. Like everybody focuses on the corners and everything. Like the hardcores that we always talk about. They're there. They're into the game. They're paying attention. They let PJ know when they don't like what's going on. Probably too much. Especially like in the first quarter, it's like everybody chill, like calm down. But you could tell they are appreciating the approach offensively, number one. In fact, the Coy Perit is in there, number 2. And number 3, I think they love watching how aggressive this defense is. And Jack Henderson on the field with me on the radio post-game, I asked him about that. He said, in his Louisiana drawl, after he thanked me for my time and my interest, which was nice, and called me sir, which I scolded him for.
He's a good old Southern boy.
He's unbelievable. Right. He's unbelievable. Thank you for your time and your interest, sir. I'm like, okay. Where was I going with that? He even said, I don't know if we can play any more aggressive, of how many different things they're doing. Him specifically, how they're choosing to use him. I think it's just a fun brand of football to watch. Now, if you lose 27-0, no one cares how fun it is to watch, but it's kind of the best of all worlds right now in that the styles are being appreciated on both sides of the ball.
Well, and what did we say all off season? This team needs to evolve. They need to change the way they do things because we've kind of seen this same movie over and over and over without any new real diversions from it, right? And it's been pretty successful. Not, didn't get you to, winning a division title, but we knew he had to come back and they had to be different. Offensively, they had to be more explosive. They had to change what they were doing in the special teams. And so I think if you're a fan, you're like, okay, they are. They're doing different things here. Like the offense looks different. The defense looks different.
Right.
They're giving Coy Perit, one of your most dynamic athletes, a chance to try to be a returner. And so they should be appreciative that Fleck is showing some flexibility in the way he does things.
You want to talk about Coy Perit now, or should we wait until after the break? Let's wait until after the break. You can collect your thoughts. You can get yourself together. You can mess with your pen a little bit, and we'll talk about Coy Perit, special teams in general for Burnsy, too, with a blocked field goal, and preview the Iowa Hawkeyes, who have a really good running back coming to Huntington Bank Stadium on Saturday night, as well as that good defense. But I teased it a little bit earlier in the show, and I had to pull up the tweet just to make sure. I'm going to mangle the pronunciation of the last name, but Tanner Glaza, or Glaza, Glaza. What a perfect first wedding anniversary dinner at Jack's Cafe. Thanks, Parent Spare Pod, for the recommendation. I'm looking. He's got his beautiful wife here. Looks like they've got the matchbook. First great year, Krista and Tanner. Unbelievable. You'll keep that forever. What did he eat here? I don't know, but looks like some type of steak. They went out to the patio, Burnsy. Looks like they had some nice red wine. It doesn't get any better than that. I mean,
Nope.
what a time. And it looks like they had a great time. And that could be you, Parent and Spare Pod listeners, whether it's your anniversary or just a date night, or you want to go for Sunday brunch, whatever it is, Jack's Cafe has you covered. And the experience is always going to be unmatched.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
a little
Chip may
emotional here.
die.
You see that?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the tweet for the first time. I'm a little emotional here. This is great. 1 year.
Yeah.
It looks like an outstanding. Like, where else would you go? Come on.
It's
Right?
a no-brainer. And look at the wedding picture, too. It looks like there's some mountains in the background or something. It looks like they're at like a vineyard. I mean, it's just magical. Just a magical time.
Tanner, attaboy. You hit a home run both with your beautiful wife and your choice of where you're going to celebrate your first anniversary. That's awesome. That's awesome.
All right, grab some
That makes
Kleenex, Chip. Burnsy, go
That
ahead.
makes my day. That makes my day.
I know Chip's going to swear by the creme brulee, but I'll say this. I think the Jack's Cafe steak can rival any of the establishments throughout the entire metro. I am a huge proponent of that steak. So whether it's brunch, date night, anniversaries, whatever it may be, or you just want to go grab a drink at that really cool bar,
Yep.
jackscafe.com.
JAXcafe.com. All right. Special teams, Burnsy. I mean, Coach
How do you like him now, Burnsy? What are you going to say now, Burnsy?
Ligashevsky, blocked field goal. Coy Perit is back there. I'd like to see Coy Perit back on kickoffs, but I'm not going to get greedy. Lemecki did not start the game very well, catching the ball and then getting smoked at the 15. I don't know if I love a starting wide receiver back there, but I'm not going to get greedy. I'm going to crawl before we can walk, before we can run, and I think there's some positive signs there. And I felt Saturday, I just had an inkling that Coy was going to pop one because it was that type of game. They were dominating. He was ready, and he came close, I think. I think if he breaks one more tackle on that one punt return, he might have housed it. But what do we think of how things are going here in the last 10 days or so?
Well, I tell you, the good news is they blocked, tipped. I don't even know what to call it because I'll tell you, it is remarkable that they actually didn't block that field goal. That ball went right between Anthony Smith's forearms. So he got so far deep in the back that it deflected off of his left forearm. The ball somehow snuck between there, and it didn't go anywhere. Like that, it's quite remarkable. But it's the first time it's happened since 2020 Michigan, which 45, 46 games ago. We're going to take that. You have the actual assumption of rational coaching, which I know Gaardsy loves to tell me that I say too much. But in what world have we ever seen special teams coaching make sense here? You put Coy Perit back there, so that's good. And then you have the bad of Lemecki loses 11 yards of field position, and Dragan Kesic misses a field goal for the third straight game. Yeah, it's 50 yards, but all four misses now have been to the right. But, Chip, let's be positive. Your boy,
right.
Esco's Minnesota, you're going to go up there and have one of your projects about that establishment once again.
Yeah, I loved Esco. I went up there and saw him last year. And, I said from day one, I think everybody just, how good an athlete he is. And he just kind of has those instincts of how to make guys miss, because it seems like it takes a special kind of talent to be a punt returner, right? A good one. Like you got to be able to make guys miss. You got to be shifty. You got to be explosive. You got to be able to bounce off a bunch of defenders. I think Perit has that. And so I said, I thought he will break one and take one to the house this season. I'm still sticking by that. I think you can see his comfort level starting to grow with each week and more reps that he gets. I mean, I just think it's obvious. And I heard you guys talking about it Sunday morning about his confidence. I mean, this is a kid who intercepted a pass when PJ and Greg Harbaugh was up watching him play. I think Greg was there, but PJ. And as he's running down, Danny Collins. And as he's running down the sideline to return an interception for a touchdown, he's pointing at PJ on the sideline. That tells you how much confidence the young man has. I heard that story and I actually texted because I was doing the Paris feature in the winter, and I texted PJ. I was like, "Is this true? Did he really point at you on the sideline?" And I think PJ might have sent a picture of him actually doing it. He's like, "Yes, he did."
Yeah.
So that tells you about the got PJ Fleck's number, by the way, Mr. Projects. Love that. For you.
Yeah. Well, it tells you, but it does tell you about. This is a guy who is pretty confident in his abilities, and I think like you said, it's starting to come out. But I just think, obviously, this should be his. And I agree with you. I'd give him a chance to return kicks too, and just try to maximize his talent as best you can.
Well, even when he was at either the pick or the punt return in the first game, where he is talking to the post game media after and says, "I need to take it to the crib." It's like, how many? I mean, That's Lawrence Maroney like confidence, right? I mean, that reminded me of something Lawrence Maroney would have said, back in the day. Like when he said, I went up to Mason and said, "Listen, Mason, I'm not getting any clock. I need to play against Illinois." Like it just those kind of guys.
Mason.
Yeah, those kind of guys just jump out at me. And even he's bleep talking after he had a pass breakup or a tackle on the sidelines while he's playing. You can tell he's starting to feel comfortable. And I would say a comfortable Coy Perit is dangerous for the Big Ten.
I'd say I don't know that Coy Perit has ever felt uncomfortable at any point in his life in an athletic situation. So,
if you're pointing at the head coach of a high school game
as you're running by him,
as you're running by him, you're feeling it.
Yeah,
you're feeling it. So it'll be interesting. I mean, it'd be an interesting twist of irony if Perit housed one this next week against the Iowa Hawkeyes. He gets a lot of Cooper DeJean comparisons all the way down to the number, so it would be definitely interesting. All right, should we talk Iowa here? They had an interesting game. Speaking of interesting, we talked about them losing the Cyhawk game last week, and then you're kind of monitoring the score, what's going on in Iowa City, and they're trailing Troy 14-10 for a while. Ferentz kind of PJ'd it, I guess, before the half and didn't go for points and got some boos. People weren't happy about that. I liked his answer, though. He's after, and they said it was my call totally. He goes, "We were playing bad." He goes, why am I making, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, the worst thing I can do is make a bad situation worse by trying to force something. Like, we needed to get into the locker room and change some stuff. And they did. They basically ran by Troy at the end. No pun intended, because the running back again was sensational. And that's kind of the one big thing they've got going on right now. So what do we know, Burnsy, about these Iowa Hawkeyes? What do we think we know about these Iowa Hawkeyes? And will any of it matter? Because it doesn't even seem to when these two teams play, at least on the Minnesota side. They've played grumpy Iowa teams before, and it hasn't much mattered in terms of the win total up here in Minneapolis.
No, it hasn't. I'd tell you, here's your strange Iowa stat through the non-conferences. No team in college football has more 30-yard runs than Iowa, and they have 6.
Wow.
And no team has allowed more 60-yard passes than Iowa, and they have allowed 3 already through 3 games.
You got to try it, man. I've been telling you for years. That's how Iowa State got back in the game. It's what Troy did to stay ahead, but go ahead.
They've been picking on the other corner that's not named Jermary Harris, who has been sensational for them on one side, but the other guy hasn't been. I tell you, I'm a huge Caleb Johnson fan, someone who has run for 100 yards in every game this year. He's number 1 in the Big Ten in yards after contact among running backs. He's got over 300 of his rushing yards after contact. He's number 2 in missed tackles forced. He's sensational. He leads the Big Ten in rushing touchdowns as well. So, he's got the ability to break one. He's really good in the red zone. And I'm Corey Heatherman. It's got to be, we got to stop Caleb Johnson. And that's a lot easier said than done. But if you can stop the run, I think this game changes a little bit. I mean, I'm sure the thing to me about this week, guys, I think these teams are very similar, where you have 2 really talented running backs in Caleb Johnson and Darius Taylor. You have 2 game manager type of quarterbacks in Cade McNamara and Max Brosmer. You feel really good about your defensive lines. I'd say that Iowa's back 7 is better than Minnesota's. I'd say Minnesota's receivers are probably better than it's a very similar game. And that's whether you want to look at it via the Vegas spread, which I think is within 3 points, whether you want to look at it through the advanced analytics, it's very 50-50 in this game. But as so many Iowa games come down to, Chip, it comes down to who shows up in the trenches.
I hate to be cliched, but I feel like this game does. Can the Gophers defensive line continue to stand up and be physical and control that running game and control Johnson where he's not having this 175-yard game and 2 touchdowns? I think that's going to be tough for him. And on the other side, can their offensive line get it together and give Brosmer enough time to get into a rhythm so he's not like I think we saw in North Carolina? And some of that was just first game nerves for him, but I also think the pressure created some of those nerves. And you saw he was kind of chopping his feet and moving around, and he never looked comfortable until late in that game. Can they allow him to give him some time so he can get in a rhythm and also get the running game going? This feels like a trenches game to me. I mean, which one of those teams comes out and you could say that was the winner? I think that's what's going to show on the scoreboard.
Well, we know it's going to be a slog just because it always is. And they always I mean, PJ talks about that. He talks about the Brett Bielema conversation he had where he said, you just play the long game. You have to play the long game. I'm curious to see, we've talked about a lot of things changing this year with the offense. I'm curious if that's going to continue to be his approach, or if the confidence he has in Brosmer. And I'm just talking about decisions, in-game management, getting to if you're at the 37, are you just going to kick a field goal and put it on Dragon's foot? Or if it's 4th and 3, are you going to go for it? Because you might need some points. I don't know. Like, I'm just fascinated to see how it all unfolds, because we know how they historically have played these games, much to my chagrin at times, that you're almost too patient and you don't take enough calculated risks and calculated chances. I reference that Max Williams game all the time just because it's such an aberration. I mean, they threw the ball all over the place with Leidner, who I was the only guy who ever wanted them to throw on Leidner Island. I still have the shirt down here somewhere. But like, you look at what Iowa State did, putting pressure on, as Burnsy said, a couple of the secondary members. You look at what Troy did, same thing, put pressure on. Like, I think you almost have to make sure that Iowa's defense is as good as it's been the last handful of years. We know that it's always going to be good. We know about their coordinator. We know all of it. The pedigree, the linebackers are ridiculous. Like, all of that's true. But it's also okay to test out your theory and maybe get up and play from ahead from a time, because they've rarely played from ahead against Iowa.
And that's the thing when I watched that Iowa State game, and the real test has come. Let's say you are trying to challenge them and you have a turnover. Do you retreat into a shell and say, we tried that doesn't work? Or you say, you know what? Okay, they got us that time, but we're going to do what's, our strength. And Iowa State kept their foot on the gas in that second half, and they got some plays on that secondary that
out of necessity, because they were trailing.
Out of necessity, but also they got them. They got the plays because they, a guy just had a misplay. So I think that's where the real test for PJ will come is if they have some adversity early with the passing game or whatever, does that knock you off your track of what you want to do and what you've shown these last couple games? Or do you say, you know what? Okay, they got us that time, but we got to keep, foot on the gas and keep trying to take some shots here.
Or even look at last year's game. Deacon Hill turns the ball over. Ethan Kaliakmanis really doesn't. Minnesota gets gifted a couple of extra possessions, which they turn into points. That's how you escape with a 12-10 win. I'm also not one to be early in the week weather terrorism guy. But I'd also tell you, if you look at the forecast, it's probably going to be raining at some stage of this game. So a slippery football on NBC is going to be an interesting part of this equation where the ball is always the program. So I think, to me, the number one thing is just which defensive line is as good as we think they are. Is Iowa's defensive line going to have performances like we've seen far too often at Huntington Bank Stadium, where it just derails things? You're constantly behind the sticks, and if you're constantly behind the sticks against Phil Parker, Godspeed. Or is it going to be Corey Heatherman can stop the run enough to put pressure on Cade McNamara? And if that's going to be the case, then Minnesota's going to have some opportunities as well. But to me, it's Minnesota's defensive line of Jah Joyner, Anthony Smith, Devin Eastern, Jalen Logan Redding, Danny Strigow. This has to be their best game of the season. If it's not, I think it's going to be awfully tough to come away with a win.
Well, it's a good test. We mentioned, North Carolina. The reason the Gophers lost that game, among others, was that they allowed Amari and Hampton to just control the game in the second half. I mean, from that first drive, right?
They missed 22 tackles against Amari and Hampton.
So you're playing. I don't know if Johnson's is as good. Maybe he's better. I
think he's probably in the same tier.
He's comparable. Yeah, comparable.
So you're playing a great back, and the game got dictated to you game one. How far? Oops, sorry, I got rattled. My desk there, my Chip Scoggins desk. But game one to game now 4, how much have you improved in that regard? Have you? If you have, then I think you have a chance. If you haven't, then Iowa can control the game and make it the game that they want to make it. And he is special. I mean, and probably the difference is he can house it. I mean, he can take it 80,
fast.
where he's a really nice player. So they're going to have their hands full. Anything else Iowa related before we kind of spin around the Big Ten here in our remaining minutes?
I tell you, so much of these Iowa games we've talked about for years has also been special teams. I mean, again, Cooper DeJean was incredible. They had Torrey Taylor. It hasn't been quite that good for them this year so far, which has been interesting. It's been okay. It's been above average, but it hasn't been game-changing abilities. So I think that's also going to come down to this is in a projected close game, can Dragan Kesich figure it out? Because he's going to have to make some big spot kicks. I mean, you're going to be kicking field goals at some point against Iowa, and it might be slippery conditions. But I think it's also might come down to Chip's boy. Can Minnesota actually have an advantage in the return game? Because field position is going to be critical. So I think that's going to be an under talked about part of this week. But in what is going to be a low scoring competitive game, I'd love to come on here next week and be wearing a Bob Ligashevsky t-shirt talking about how great that man is. So we're going to have to find out.
I'll say before we spin around the Big Ten quickly, talk about Wisconsin and Alabama and Indiana going to the Rose Bowl and crushing the Bruins in front of thousands of Indiana fans, which I think is going to be a trend for the Big Ten this year. Everybody at Huntington Bank Stadium on Saturday. Let's just be smart. Let's just be careful. Let's just keep it fun. Do not get in any fights. Do not get in any fist fights with your kids or your wife or your husband watching, especially about an invalid fair catch. I know let's not have any brawls start because of the Dinkytown Athletes t-shirt. Let's not have any brawls start because of the it wasn't a fair catch shirt. Let's not throw up on anybody. Everybody have a great time. It should be, I mean, rivalries are the best. I mean, you see, this picture behind me is one of my prized possessions. Iowa, Minnesota. I can't remember who
What
made
is the
it.
play? What is the play?
I'm not sure. It's a Neiman chip. It's just at the Metrodome. Yeah. It's just a random Gopher Iowa picture. There's only like 2,000 of them or something like that. And my dad bought one in like 1986. And now it hangs here next to my game balls, Burnsy. But that's what it's all about. You see Kevin O'Connell gave a game ball to everybody, by the way, after the game yesterday. So I wonder if PA and Bursich and Lieber are going to get one. But rivalries are supposed to be awesome. Like, I get it. The we hate Iowa stuff. I get it. They're mad about all this. But let's be congenial, everybody, because it can get messy at a 6:30, rainy, tailgating all day, duck beer in play.
For that maroon out, yeah.
And I say this as someone who had to dodge Busch Light cans last year on the field at Kinnick Stadium.
Yeah.
We don't need that. We don't need that. It's not a good look for anybody, so we don't need that. But end of sermon. That there goes my TED Talk. You want to add anything, Burnsy?
No, I think you took it well, preacher.
Yeah.
I do like how dramatic I made it, like I was, taking shrapnel on the radio. PJ2, the Gophers are out on the field, super dramatic.
Cans coming, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I can say it was a first in my 13 years on the sideline. I've never had to dodge beer cans. But so everybody
no flag on that play, by the way, as hundreds, if not thousands, of full Busch Lights are raining onto the field. They have to stop play, move Minnesota out to midfield.
Yeah.
No unsportsmanlike conduct flag on the Iowa fans. So
yeah, keep it civil.
That's interesting.
Let's not leave it to chance. And also, those poor officials needed like cloak and dagger exit from. We heard that a couple of weeks ago, like how they got him out of Kinnick Stadium. There's tunnels, I think, that I didn't even know existed in the stadium that's been 100 years or so. All right, so the game of the week last week, or at least what people were most, I think, interested in, was how are Luke Fickell's Wisconsin Badgers going to handle Kalen DeBoer's Crimson Tide. It was exciting to have the Alabama Crimson Tide come up to Big Ten country. They get to come here in 2033. I can't wait for season 12 of the Parent and Spare podcast to break that one down. That'll be fun. Hopefully we'll be giving away tickets thanks to Jack's Cafe. Chip will be living in the mountains of Tennessee somewhere with shaky Wi-Fi, but
making white lightning off the property.
It was setting up to be a recipe for an upset. Wisconsin, even though their quarterback got hurt, got an early field goal. Alabama missed an early field goal. Then Wisconsin goes for a 4th and 1, does not get it. And from then on, it was roll, Tide, roll.
Shotgun out of 4th and 1 is a fireable offense. I don't care if you're Phil Longo or whoever you may be. If you're going against Alabama's front 4th and 1 and you're going to go out of shotgun, what are we doing?
I was the game was on. I said last week I didn't think it'd be close. I thought Alabama would take care of it pretty easily, and they did. Once Van Dyke got hurt, and I haven't seen the reports. I saw Fickell's comments right after the game where he said it doesn't look good. I don't know if that's
we haven't heard anything further as we record this Monday early afternoon.
But when a coach says that, they have a pretty good idea that it's not going to be a positive outcome for short term, at least. They were overmatched. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. I mean, there's a different caliber of, you're talking about one of the premier teams in college football right now, and Wisconsin was just completely overmatched athletically. And so the outcome, it didn't surprise me, and particularly when they had to go to their backup quarterback I just saw the first half, he looked nervous going against that Alabama.
That's a
defense.
tough putt. That's a tough entry.
All right, son, get in there. Yeah.
We believe in you.
Your first action.
Go get Alabama, boy.
That went about as like I thought it was going to go.
Well, what's
I think that
interesting.
game flipped, though, to your point, when Van Dyke exited, but also when Ches Malusi fumbled, they missed the field goal, and then 2 plays later, 73 yards, and you're in the end zone, and it's 21-3 at half instead of 14-3. And at that point, you're going to have to pass the ball with your backup quarterback in cold. I mean, I'd also say we're going to find out a lot about Wisconsin now. If Van Dyke's injury is as horrific as it sounds, which is really unfortunate for him. We also heard all offseason out of Madison, Braden Locke's 1B to the 1A, which is why Tyler Van Dyke wasn't named starter until about 2 weeks before their first game. So we're going to see if that was coach speak, if it was hyperbole, or if it was true. But yeah, that game wasn't close. I tell you, your boy Jalen Milroe looks like a Heisman candidate. He had a Heisman type of performance in Camp Randall.
Yeah. Well, it's just
go ahead, Chipper.
No, I mean, I don't know if the quarterback competition was really as close as they made it out to seem. Sometimes the coaches just say that to, for whatever reason to manage the situation. But I want to see him when he's not thrown in the middle of an action against Alabama, like when he has a week to prepare as a starter and you're facing, not one of the best teams in the country. You're right. We'll get a better read on what this guy is as in being able to run that offense.
Well, they got a bye week to prepare for USC now.
Yeah, how about 2 weeks for USC, Chip? Is that good?
Yeah.
They got 2 weeks, then they're at the Coliseum to take on USC. And we mentioned it preseason. Their schedule's rough. They've got Penn State, they've got Oregon, they've got Nebraska, who, of course, will be in the top 10 with one more victory. But they've got, after that Northern Iowa win, I can't believe they're only 22nd.
I love your list of grievances.
We know. We just know. It's just, I've done this long enough. We know they're one win away from, being in the top 10. But that schedule is unforgiving. And the thing that's interesting is we're already getting now. This is where it gets troubling. Is we even heard like a week ago, we talked about it. People are on fickle about what's the identity of the program. What are we doing? Can we do the air raid, the whole bit? I'm like,
dairy raid to you.
Yeah, fine. Are we doing a Gary Anderson 2.0 here, where you're going to have a guy who knows what he's doing? Okay, whatever you think of him and his style. He took Cincinnati to the playoff. I get it. It's probably an easier road at times, but you also had to be perfect for like 2 years, and they were. Had a couple of good players. It's different in the Big Ten, right? I mean, the Big Ten is for the big boys here. Like every week is going to be tough, especially when you're bringing Alabama in non-conference. It's crazy. But I would just caution Wisconsin fans. Like maybe you're right. Maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it's a complete culture fail that the dairy raid's not going to work in Madtown. But Barry Alvarez ain't walking through that door. The offense is, as we have said on this pod, chip number one, modern offense. Like there's a different way to do things now that everybody seems to be doing. But we're already getting like alumni tweets and former player tweets, and we support the program, but yes, we have some concerns. It's like, that's just not helpful. Like, let the guy you hired. I thought for me, him and Matt Rule, I thought were the two best hires in the country in that hiring cycle. And everybody knows my feelings on Matt Rule. The guy's a complete stud. I love Nebraska. It's not surprising, but like, you got a guy who's also pretty good. Like, you hired him to be himself and to bring his ideas there. Let him build his program a little bit. They seem to be recruiting okay. They obviously are always going to be able to attract players. It's a great place to go to school, as much as I hate saying that. The Saturday vibe is cool, the whole deal. But, man, when we're 14, 15 games into a tenure and we're already doing the former players' tweets, it's like, guys, close the yearbook. Like, it's not the 90s Rose Bowl runs. Like, it's just that's not reality. Like, let the guy build a program a little bit. There's end of TED Talk 2.
I like the soapbox version of you today.
You're getting me after like a full morning of coffee and lunch. Usually you're getting me at 10. I might still be a little bit sleepy, but Mr. Projects pushed us back today. So I'm just saying, right? Like, they may all be right. They may all have it all figured out, but maybe Jim Leonard should have gotten the job. Like some Wisconsin media claimed that he was going to before he got fired 2 hours after the game. But like, just let the guy build a program, right? I mean, let's let him build a program here. We don't need former player tweets, guys. It's just not helpful.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much to add, Chip.
I know. Well said. Well said.
Wow, that's it, huh? No pushback?
Again, it's just like that schedule is going to be unforgiving, especially if Van Dyke's not going to be ready to go. You have a bye week to prepare for USC, and then that gauntlet before they play Minnesota is likely 4 ranked teams in Penn State, Iowa, Oregon, and Nebraska. Like, where are you? I mean, that's at this point, I mean, you're hoping to get to a bowl game if you're going to be on backup quarterback just after a few games. But again, I don't even know what Wisconsin is this season. We talked about it going into that Bama game. You're losing to Western Michigan to start the fourth quarter. You're up 1 score on South Dakota in the fourth quarter. And now you just got boat raced. Yeah. You're not going to fire Luke Fickell after year 2. Stop it. I mean, no one should be calling for that. He's got an opportunity to build a program and they're recruiting well, but I don't know what this season is going to entail, especially if you got QB2 the rest of this way.
Well, it's the instant gratification. You see a guy who comes in with, a track record of huge success. And, I agree with what Gaardsy said, like one of the top coaches they could have got on the market. It's not going to happen instantly when you're changing things over and trying to instill your own way of doing things. It takes time. If it happens instantly, wonderful, but I don't know that has to be the expectation. And if there's some struggles like, oh my God, this was a failure, it's maybe just slow down and let the guy, implement his system and get his recruiting classes in. And I know that's hard to do in today's modern age where everything has to be instant. Right away, but the guy's a good coach.
With the portal, you can do it quicker. So there shouldn't be as much patience as the old days. With the portal, you can do it quicker, but then that goes back to NIL and everything that's in that realm too.
Exactly. I mean, the guy has a track record. He's a good coach. Same way that it wasn't an accident that PJ won where he won coming here. He's a good coach. I mean, those things take coaching chops to get it programs at that level. It just takes time sometimes to get you implement your system.
Couple of fun ones to wrap up the podcast here that we'll be watching this weekend. Friday night, Illinois at aforementioned Nebraska, 7:00 on Fox. Both of those teams ranked 24 and 22. That should be a fun Big Ten game. And then Michigan kind of needing to right itself a little bit, right? They've announced they're going to make a quarterback change. They struggled with something called Arkansas State this past Saturday. We know what happened against Texas. They get the next 2 Gopher opponents are playing against each other after Iowa. USC comes up to Michigan. They played in the Rose Bowl like 1,000,000 times, and now they get to play as conference rivals. Pretty cool.
I can't wait for that Michigan USC game. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very tuned into that one because you have USC with a bye week to prepare. USC has looked really good through the first couple of weeks, but now I think Sharon Moore is going to light up a little bit of a fire after the performances they've had. It's still the big house. Now, if USC brings it to Michigan there, I think that speaks volumes about both teams here in 2024. But I think the quarterback change is going to be interesting because Davis Warren has 3 incompletions last week, and they were all interceptions.
Oops.
Part and why he only wins by 10 points. But Orji is more of a running quarterback, a bigger guy. He was the guy I thought they were going to go with to start the season. It's kind of the way that they designed the offense around. We'll see if USC is prepared for that. And I want to see if USC can match the physicality of Michigan. Yeah. And I know Michigan hasn't looked like they looked last year as a national champion. They lost a lot of guys, but that's still a Michigan football team. So I'm going to be very curious for that one this weekend.
Well, yeah, Michigan doesn't get embarrassed too often, or too often do they look overmatched. Well, they did last time out, or when Texas
against Texas.
Yep. I think Texas is. I mean, we've seen that they're really good.
Texas is the number 1 team in the country, and I'm glad they're ranked as such.
Yeah, they're really good, but that doesn't happen to Michigan too often. So let's see how they respond. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago how USC's defense looked different than what we've seen in the past. Let's see if that holds up against a physical, Big Ten opponent. And if they play that way defensively against Michigan, now you say, okay, USC is going to be a team that you're going to have to watch the rest of the season and as a playoff type team.
Gaardsy, where are you telling Randy Johnson to rank Nebraska if they beat Illinois at home? Are you saying number 2 in the country, number 22?
Well, if he has any credibility at all, they have to be top 5.
Yeah,
they have to be top 5, and we need to. And I don't know who they play next, but I assume College Game Day will be there, and and the Fox Show, and Pat McAfee. I mean, I assume you're only. If he doesn't rank him in the top 5, then I would say he needs to figure out what he's watching. Okay. That's what I would say. But, it's a ranked team, so they're going to get credit for it. And by the way, again, I love Matt Rule.
And Nebraska's a good football team.
Yeah,
I agree.
Good. Their quarterback's awesome.
The quarterback's good.
Their defense is great.
it's just
specifically that D line.
Yeah, you just know that it does not take much. Wait till Indiana basketball, beats Minnesota. I think
Yes.
they're playing like December 9th or something in one of the early Big Ten games that got leaked. Wait till they take Kentucky to the wire or something at the Champions Classic in Chicago on Thanksgiving weekend. They're going to be in the top 10, and Mike Woodson's done it again. They're back. For his, there's just things that are going to happen, and I don't know why they bother me so much, but they do. But yeah, thanks for reminding me. Thanks for bringing it back up and getting me all worked up. I'm trying to go. Chip has to get on another phone call. Mr. Projects has something to do. Last reminder. Go ahead.
This was the Justin Gaard grievance edition here.
It's only going to get worse. I'm only getting older.
He just goes down his list where he gets check.
It's almost Festivus season.
I got my Nebraska shot in. I got my Iowa shot in.
The thing is, I love Matt Rule. I love Kirk Ferentz. I just everybody be smart, be safe this weekend.
Yes. Let's have fun. This should be a fun week.
This should be a great rivalry weekend. Don't drink too much. Try not to have intercourse in the bathroom like somebody did back at the Metrodome. Try to leave the goalposts where they are. All of those things. Anything else we want to talk about, or are we good?
I think we should end on intercourse in the bathroom. That's a great spot.
All right. I think so, too. Thanks to Jack's Cafe. Hope you want to come back next week, Bill. JAXcafe.com is the website. Make your reservations, and we'll see you Saturday. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Follow us here on the YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. We'll talk to you next week on the Pair and a Spare podcast.